These are some frequently asked questions regarding California's electoral system. How many statewide officers are there in California? In our state government, there are 9 constitutional offices, all of whom are elected by the statewide electorate. Are there term limits for constitutional officers? Yes, they're limited to serving a maximum of 2 4-year terms in each office. How many seats are in the California legislature? There are 80 assembly members and 40 senators for a total of 120 legislative seats. Are there term limits for legislative seats? Yes, the total that can be served in a lifetime is 12 years in either house or a combination of the two houses. Again, that's a total lifetime limit of 12 years. How often do legislators run for office? Assembly members run for office every 2 years, while state senators run every 4 years. How can an individual become a superior court judge? There are 2 ways to be a superior court judge in this state, either through appointment by the governor or to run for that office. How can an individual become an appellate court judge? It's only by gubernatorial appointment. That is, no one can run for a judgeship at the appellate court level, and they are subject to a retention election every 12 years. What is the process for California appellate court judges being selected? These appellate court judges are appointed by the governor and then subject to confirmation by what's called the Jenny Commission. And ultimately, they are subject to voter approval through the use of a 12-year retention election. What are some of the significant measures that have impacted California's electoral system over the past decade? The first would probably be the top 2 primary. The second is the modified term limits law mentioned earlier. And the third is the use of the Independent Redistricting Commission for all legislative districts. What is California's top 2 primary? In this state, the 2 candidates who proceed to the November general election are the 2 candidates with the most votes in the primary election. What are some consequences of the top 2 primary? There can be 2 Democrats facing each other, 2 Republicans facing each other, or the traditional Democrat facing a Republican, or even third-party candidates. What was California's original term limits law? Proposition 140 was adopted by the statewide voters in 1990. Under Prop 140, assembly terms were limited to 3 2-year terms, while senators were limited to 2 4-year terms for a total of 14 years between the 2 houses. What was the first effort to change California's term limits law? There were 2 limits. The first was unsuccessful to try and change the term limits law. According to political pundits at the time, the first measure failed because it was retroactive in its application, meaning that it applied to legislators who were in office at that time. So that change was rejected by the voters. What was the second effort to change California's term limits law? The second version, which of course ultimately was successful, changed the term limits law to allow a maximum of 12 years of service in either house or a combination of the 2. What were the main reasons for the independent citizens redistricting effort? Critics had claimed that incumbents were always protected in the decennial process, and so challengers had a tougher time taking on long-term incumbents. Also, those in the minority party often complained that legislative district drawing resulted in seats ensuring majority party control, with few so-called toss-up seats that might change partisan hands. How are state legislators elected? In California, our legislators are elected pursuant to what is called a plurality vote and single winner contest, as opposed to what we call ranked choice voting or multi-winner voting. The same occurs with constitutional officers who are elected on a statewide basis. And finally, are local government officials elected differently? Some local governments utilize a multi-winner election in which multiple candidates can be elected to the same office, such as a city council. Also, there are a handful of local jurisdictions in California that utilize the so-called ranked choice voting system as well.